AITA for kicking out my boyfriend and his entire family, 11 members he brought without warning when I was hosting my birthday party. I only invited my friends and my boyfriend. Hi everyone. I am a 24-year-old woman and this past weekend I hosted a small birthday party at my apartment. I had been planning it for weeks, and I was really looking forward to it. I wanted something low-key, something cozy, just me, a few of my closest friends, some good food, a few games, and a night of laughter and catching up. Nothing fancy, nothing overwhelming, just something that felt like me. Of course, I invited my boyfriend, who is 26. Let's call him Matt. We have been together for about a year and a half, and things have been mostly good. I made it very clear to him when I invited him that it was going to be a small, casual get-together with just my friends. I told him it was not some huge blowout or family event. He said he was excited and looking forward to it, and I was really happy he was going to be there to celebrate with me. Saturday night came, and I had everything set up. My apartment is not big, so I had arranged the seating, put out all the food, lit some candles, set up a little area for board games, and made sure the place was clean and comfortable. People started arriving, and the atmosphere was exactly what I had hoped for, warm, chill, easygoing. About 30 minutes into the party, I heard a loud knock on the door. I was expecting Matt, so I ran over excitedly to open it. The second I opened the door, my heart dropped straight to the floor. Standing there was Matt, and behind him was a crowd of people. His parents. His 2 sisters. Their boyfriends. His aunt and uncle. 11 extra people in total, none of whom I had invited, none of whom I even knew very well, standing there smiling and holding Tupperware containers, gift bags, and, in some cases, their coats already off like they fully expected to settle in for the night. I must have looked like a deer caught in headlights because Matt just smiled and said something like, "Happy birthday. Look who came to celebrate with you," before stepping inside and motioning for everyone to come in. I was frozen for a second, completely thrown off. His family flooded into my apartment, immediately taking over the space. His mom went straight to my kitchen and started rearranging all the food I had carefully set up. His sisters started pulling extra chairs from my bedroom without asking. His dad was fiddling with my stereo. One of the boyfriends even unplugged my string lights because he thought it made the room too dim. It felt like a tidal wave had hit my tiny home and there was absolutely nothing I could do to stop it. I pulled Matt aside, trying to keep my voice low and calm even though I could feel my cheeks burning. I asked him what was going on, why he had brought his whole family without even telling me. He looked genuinely confused and said something along the lines of, "I thought it would be nice to have them celebrate with you. You said it was going to be casual, and they all love a casual party." I was stunned. I told him that this was my birthday party, that it was meant to be a small gathering with my friends, and that it was completely inappropriate for him to invite a dozen people without asking me. He just shrugged and said, "Well, they're here now, just go with it." I stood there for a moment, feeling like I was going to either scream or cry. But I took a deep breath and decided to try to salvage the evening. For about half an hour, I forced myself to smile. I tried to engage with his family. I tried to ignore the way my friends were huddled awkwardly in a corner, clearly uncomfortable and unsure of what to do. It was obvious they felt like outsiders at my own party, and it broke my heart to see them checking their phones and exchanging glances. Matt's family, on the other hand, acted like they owned the place. They dominated every conversation. They took over the game area I had set up. They loudly talked about family vacations I had never been a part of. They served themselves massive plates of food, ignoring the fact that I had made just enough for my small group. They were not rude exactly, but they were completely oblivious to the fact that they had hijacked an event that was never meant for them. After about 30 minutes, I realized I was not having fun. None of my friends were having fun. This was supposed to be a night for me to feel loved and celebrated, and instead, I felt like a guest at someone else's family reunion. I could feel the anxiety creeping up my throat, making it hard to breathe. I stood up, took another deep breath, and, trying to keep my voice steady, I said, "I want to thank everyone for coming, but the party is over now." There was a moment of stunned silence. I turned to Matt's family and, as politely but firmly as I could, I said, "I really appreciate you coming to celebrate, but this was supposed to be a small party with my friends. I did not plan for this many people. I need you all to leave." His family looked shocked. Some of them started gathering their things slowly, looking uncomfortable. Matt looked absolutely stunned, like he could not believe what I had just done. He tried to argue with me under his breath, asking why I was making a big deal out of it, but I stood my ground. Eventually, they all left. My apartment, which had been filled with noise and chaos just moments before, was suddenly silent. Most of my friends had already slipped out when things started getting weird, so I was left standing there alone, surrounded by half-eaten plates of food, moved furniture, and the heavy, sinking feeling that I had somehow ruined my own birthday. Matt texted me later that night, saying he could not believe how ungrateful I had been and that his family had only wanted to do something nice for me. He said he was embarrassed by how I treated them and that I had made him look bad. I did not respond. Now, a few days later, I keep replaying everything in my head. Part of me feels justified because it was my home, my party, and he completely overstepped. But another part of me wonders if I could have handled it better or if I was too harsh. So I guess I am here to ask, am I the asshole? Update 1. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of angry messages. My phone was vibrating non-stop on my nightstand, and for a few minutes, I just stared at it, half hoping it was all some weird dream. It was not. The first wave of messages came from Matt's sisters. One of them called me a spoiled princess who thinks the world revolves around her, saying I had humiliated their entire family and broken Matt's heart. The other sister chimed in not long after, telling me I was an ungrateful little girl who did not deserve a real family's love and that Matt should be thanking his lucky stars he saw my true colors before it was too late. I had barely processed their words before a massive wall of text arrived from Matt's mother. It was almost the length of a novel. She talked about how family should always come first, how Matt had been raised to understand that celebrations are not just about the individual but about bringing people together, about community and love. She said it was heartbreaking to see someone so young be so selfish and disrespectful, and that she had hoped to welcome me into their family with open arms, but now she realized I clearly lacked the values they held dear. Reading it made me feel like I was suffocating. It did not stop there. Even some of Matt's cousins, people I barely knew, people I had maybe met once in passing, decided they needed to put in their 2 cents. They called me cold and selfish for turning away people who just wanted to love me. One cousin even suggested that I must have been planning to cut Matt off from his family if we ever got married, painting this bizarre picture of me isolating him from everyone who cared about him. The pile-on was relentless and overwhelming. Every time I silenced my phone, more notifications would appear within minutes, each message worse than the last. At first, I was stunned. My stomach was twisted in knots, and for a little while, I really did start second-guessing myself. Was I truly that awful? Was wanting a party with just my friends so unreasonable? I sat there curled up on my couch, rereading everything over and over, trying to figure out where I had gone so wrong. The weight of their anger was crushing, and for a few shaky moments, I honestly thought about sending out an apology just to make it stop. But then, as the minutes stretched into hours and I kept reading their words, something inside me shifted. The more I read, the more I realized how twisted this all was. They were not upset because I had been cruel. They were not hurt because I had done anything malicious. They were acting like I had personally attacked them just by asking for basic respect in my own home. In their minds, my boundaries were an insult. My right to control what happened in my space was seen as arrogance. They did not see me as a person deserving of consideration, they saw me as an extension of Matt, someone who should have simply accepted whatever they wanted to do because it came from them. That realization gave me enough clarity to finally text Matt directly. I wrote that I needed him to understand, he had brought 11 people into my house without asking, and that was not okay. I told him it was not just about the number of people, it was about the complete disregard for me, my space, and the plans I had made with my friends. I said it was not fair to me or to the people who had been invited. He replied almost immediately. His response made my blood boil. He said I was making drama out of nothing. That his family loved celebrating things together, and I should be grateful they wanted to be there. As if their mere presence was a gift I should have been honored to accept, regardless of how I actually felt. I stared at his message for a long time. My hands were shaking with anger and disbelief. I knew there was no way I could have a meaningful conversation like this, not over text, not while every word felt like a slap in the face. So I told him we were not going to argue through messages. If he really cared about making this right, if he really wanted to work through this, then we needed to meet in person and actually talk about it. No yelling, no deflecting, just an honest conversation face to face. There was a long pause before he responded. When he finally did, he said he agreed, and he invited me to come over to his parents' house so we could make peace. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling a mix of relief and dread. Going back into their territory made my skin crawl, but part of me still hoped that maybe, against all odds, this could be a step toward understanding each other. I was nervous but thought maybe this was progress. Update 2. When I arrived at Matt's parents' house, it felt wrong from the very first second I stepped inside. There was this thick, artificial tension hanging in the air, almost like static before a thunderstorm, making the small hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It was the kind of feeling that wraps itself around you immediately, heavy and unshakable, warning you that something was very, very off. The living room looked like it had been staged for a performance I had not been invited to rehearse for. Every single member of Matt's family was packed together, sitting rigidly on the couches and chairs like a jury that had already reached a verdict before I even opened the door. No casual chatting, no laughter, no lightness, just stiff bodies and silent, simmering tension. Their posture alone told me everything I needed to know. Crossed arms, tight mouths, cold stares. Some of them were openly glaring at me like I had personally insulted them, while others gave me brittle, strained smiles that made my skin crawl. The air between us was so thick with judgment I could almost taste it. It was the kind of atmosphere where every movement felt like it might shatter something fragile and dangerous at the same time. At first, they tried to pretend everything was normal, but it was so forced it only made the tension worse. His mom stood up first, moving with this strange, almost robotic energy. She plastered a too-wide grin onto her face, the kind that never reached her eyes, and said, "Thank you for coming, sweetie," in a sing-song tone that made my stomach twist even tighter. Her voice was dripping with fake warmth, like someone greeting a neighbor they secretly despised. His dad barely moved his body, just flicked his hand stiffly toward the hardest, most upright-looking chair in the room, offering it like a challenge instead of a courtesy. I sat down because I did not know what else to do, my body tense and awkward, hyper-aware of every pair of eyes glued to me. Matt slid into the seat next to mine and gave me a look that was almost comically out of place. It was the look of a kid who had glued something back together with Elmer's and was proudly showing it off to his parents. "See? We are fixing it," his eyes said, completely oblivious to the crackling hostility around us. I forced a tiny, polite smile and tried to focus on breathing evenly. For a few long, agonizing minutes, we went through the motions of awkward small talk, like actors fumbling through a script written in a language none of us spoke fluently. His mom asked me about work, but the words came out sharp and clipped, more like an interrogation than genuine interest. She did not ask because she cared, she asked because it was expected, because it kept up the illusion of civility. His aunt chimed in with a comment about the weather, something so mind-numbingly generic it was almost insulting, like we were strangers making obligatory conversation in a hospital waiting room. Every second stretched out endlessly. My stomach churned so violently I thought I might be sick, and I could feel sweat prickling at my palms. Every instinct in my body screamed at me that this was not a safe place, that this was not going to end well, but I forced myself to stay seated, to be polite, to give them a chance, even when it felt like walking straight into a fire. Then, without any preamble, Matt's dad cleared his throat loudly, a sharp, deliberate sound that cut through the fake pleasantries like a buzzsaw. The suddenness of it made me flinch. He sat up straighter, shoulders squared, and fixed me with a cold, unwavering stare that felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. His voice was low and firm when he said, "We are willing to forgive you if you apologize." There was no room for discussion, no kindness, no attempt at understanding. It was a command disguised as an offer. For a second, I just blinked at him, sure that I must have misheard. Surely they could not actually believe that was a reasonable thing to say. The room went so deathly silent I could hear the ticking of the old clock on the mantel, each second a thunderous beat in the suffocating quiet. I asked cautiously, forcing my voice to stay steady even as my heart hammered against my ribs, "Apologize, for what, exactly?" I asked it because some small, foolish part of me still wanted to believe that this could be salvaged, that this was just a misunderstanding we could work through. His mom was the one who answered, her voice sticky sweet and unbearably condescending, like she was talking to a particularly dense child. She said, "For the way you treated our family. For making us feel unwelcome. We went out of our way to celebrate you." She said it like she was offering me a priceless opportunity, like I should be groveling at her feet in gratitude for the honor of their uninvited presence at my party. I just stared at them, feeling like I had been dropped into some kind of surreal nightmare. Was this seriously happening? Was this real? I reminded them, trying so hard to keep my voice level, to stay respectful even though my hands were trembling in my lap, that no one had even told me they were coming. That it had been my birthday, a gathering I had planned for my friends, and that they had taken over without asking, without caring how it would affect me or the people I had actually invited. I spoke the truth as plainly and gently as I could, but I could see from the hard set of their mouths that it did not matter. They were not here to listen. Before I could even finish my sentence, one of Matt's sisters leaned forward aggressively, cutting me off with an exaggerated sigh of exasperation. She looked at me like I was the stupidest person in the world and said, "You are missing the point. Family shows up whether it is convenient or not. That is what love is." She said it with the smug certainty of someone who genuinely believed she had just delivered a mic drop moment, like the mere act of them showing up, uninvited and overwhelming, should have erased any need for consent or consideration. And in that moment, everything inside me settled into place with terrifying clarity. They did not see anything wrong with what they had done. In their minds, their presence was not just acceptable, it was inherently virtuous. They thought they were doing me a favor. They thought the sheer fact of their existence in my home was a gift I should have been grateful for, no matter how much it bulldozed over my feelings, my friends, my carefully made plans. In their version of the story, I was the villain simply because I had dared to expect the bare minimum of respect. I realized then that nothing I said, nothing I explained, nothing I apologized for would ever be enough. They had already written the ending to this story, and in their version, I was wrong by default. The only way to stay in their good graces would have been to erase myself entirely, to accept whatever they wanted to do, whenever they wanted to do it, no matter how it affected me. So I stood up, feeling a calmness wash over me that was almost eerie after the chaos and anxiety of the last few days. It was not anger, not sadness, not even defiance. It was just pure, clean certainty. I looked around the room, meeting the expectant, judgmental faces of every person there, and I said, "I am not apologizing for wanting basic respect in my own home." My voice did not shake. It did not rise. It was steady, measured, final, a line drawn in concrete. Matt's dad immediately pointed toward the door with a sharp, almost theatrical motion and said, "Then you can leave." So I did. I stood a little taller as I turned and walked out of that house. I did not slam the door behind me. I did not cry or look back, searching for some sign of regret or understanding on their faces. I did not apologize or explain myself one more time. I simply left, because there was nothing left to say, nothing left to salvage. And honestly it felt like the right choice. Update 3. The day after getting kicked out of Matt's parents' house, I thought the storm had finally passed. I spent the morning trying to distract myself, cleaning, reading, scrolling through my phone mindlessly, anything to keep from replaying everything in my head for the 1000th time. It was early afternoon when my phone rang, and when I saw Matt's name on the screen, my heart clenched in my chest. I almost did not answer. A big part of me just wanted to be done, to leave everything exactly where it had fallen. But my hand moved before my brain could catch up, and I picked up. From the first word out of his mouth, I could tell his tone was different. Softer. Almost desperate. He was not angry this time. He sounded exhausted, like he had been fighting a battle and was finally realizing he was losing. He said he wanted to meet for coffee, just the two of us. No family involved, no staged interventions, no expectations except to talk. He said he did not want to lose me over what he called a stupid misunderstanding. His voice cracked slightly when he said it, and for a moment, a flicker of the boy I had fallen for shone through the mess. Part of me bristled at the idea of seeing him again. After everything that had happened, after the way I had been treated, sitting down across from him felt like willingly reopening a wound that was finally starting to scab over. But another part of me, the part that hated unfinished endings, the part that wanted closure, the part that still remembered all the good before everything soured, could not say no. So I agreed. We picked a quiet coffee shop downtown, one of those cozy little places with creaky wooden floors and soft music playing low in the background. When I walked in, I spotted him immediately. He was sitting at a corner table, fiddling nervously with a coffee cup, his knee bouncing under the table. He looked tired. More than tired, he looked worn down, like the weight of the last few days had finally caught up to him. I sat down across from him without a word, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. No smiles, no small talk. Just a heavy, fragile silence stretching between us. He jumped in almost immediately, spilling out the words like he was afraid I would stand up and leave before he could get them out. He told me he loved me. He told me he wanted to move past this. That none of this was worth losing each other over. But he said, and he said it with a kind of pleading insistence, that I had to understand where he was coming from. He said, when you date me, you date my family too. We are a package deal. That is just how it is. He said it like it was a fact of life, as unchangeable as gravity or the rising sun. I nodded slowly, choosing my words carefully. I said, I get that. I do not mind being part of a family. I do not mind sharing holidays, or Sunday dinners, or showing up for birthdays. I even want that. But what I am not okay with is being bulldozed and disrespected in my own home. I said it calmly, without heat, without accusation, but the words hung heavy in the air between us. He sighed and looked away, rubbing the back of his neck like he was trying to work out a knot that just would not loosen. He said, if you loved me, you would have just gone with it. You would have apologized. His voice was soft, almost regretful, but the meaning behind the words was a blow sharper than anything he had thrown at me before. That was the moment it clicked for me. All the confusion, all the second-guessing, all the tiny ways I had twisted myself into knots trying to understand how things had gone so wrong, it all crystallized into brutal clarity. This was not just a difference of opinion. This was not just a misunderstanding about one bad night. This was a fundamental, bedrock difference in how we saw respect, boundaries, and love itself. He thought love meant unquestioning loyalty, even at the cost of my comfort, my voice, my autonomy. He thought love meant swallowing disrespect and smiling through it because that was the price of being accepted. And I realized, sitting there across from him in that quiet little coffee shop, that I could never live that way. I could not love someone if it meant erasing myself to do it. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt this profound sadness settle over me. Because I knew I loved him. But I also knew that loving him would require a kind of sacrifice I was no longer willing to make. I told him quietly, if love means sacrificing all my boundaries and self-respect, then I do not want it. My voice did not shake. My hands did not tremble. I felt calm, steady, like I was finally standing on solid ground after days of feeling like I was drowning. I stood up, pushed my chair back with a soft scrape against the worn floorboards, and wished him well. It was not bitter. It was not angry. It was just the simple, sad ending of something that was never going to fit the way we had both hoped it would. I walked out of that coffee shop with my head held high, the sunlight sharp and bright against my skin. On the way to my car, I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and began methodically blocking his number. Then his sisters. His mom. Every single person who had thought it was their right to tear me down for daring to have boundaries. Every single person who had mistaken control for love. It was not spiteful. It was survival. For the first time in days, I felt free. Not just free from the noise and the anger and the guilt they had tried to bury me under, but free from the slow erosion of myself that had been happening long before that disastrous birthday party. Was it painful? Of course it was. It hurt in a deep, aching way that only comes from losing someone you once saw a future with. But the pain was clean, honest. It was a pain that reminded me of who I was, and who I was never willing to become for anyone. It was a clear, ringing reminder that I would rather be alone than with people who think loving me means controlling me.